sites.
The bill passed without Republican leader Kevin McCarthy telling Fox News Primetime because
it rewards bad behavior. For those reckless cities and states, they get rewarded. California has a $10 billion surplus, but they're getting money. It is just the wrong bill at the wrong time, too costly and too liberal.
The president will sign the bill on Friday. An apparently healthy 39-year-old Utah mom has died 4 days after receiving her second dose of the coronavirus vaccine. Her family says Cassidy Carrill died from liver failure. The autopsy report is still pending. According to the Centers for Disease Control, of the 92 million people in the U.S. who've been vaccinated, there are more than 1,600 deaths reported. The government has ordered more doses of the newest vaccine.
President Biden praised Johnson & Johnson and Merck for collaborating on the one-shot vaccine and putting patriotism and public health first. He says the government is getting more.
Another 100 million doses and purchase another 100 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Johnson & Johnson CEO Alex Gorsky says this was never about competition.
It's really a race against time to defeat a common enemy.
The president says they are closer to the goal of enough vaccine for every adult American by the end of May.
Fox's Gernal Scott, a group of women state lawmakers in New York reportedly circulating a letter demanding the resignation of Governor Andrew Cuomo. As details surface of the latest allegation against him, the governor denies any wrongdoing. America is listening to Fox News.
The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanonmu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
A one-time Supreme Court nominee has been confirmed as the country's new Attorney General.
A bipartisan 70-30 vote in the Senate confirmed Judge Merrick Garland to serve as President Biden's Attorney General. Garland, who's been the chief judge of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals for several years, has been a member of that court since 1997. Former President Obama nominated Garland for the Supreme Court in 2016. That nomination was not considered by the then Republican-led Senate. In his confirmation hearing, Garland vowed to run an independent Justice Department. Republican supporters say they were satisfied with Garland's record in temperament. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
The Minnesota Supreme Court has let stand an appeals court order that directs the trial judge in former police officer Derek Chauvin's murder trial to consider reinstating a third-degree murder charge in George Floyd's death. The judge dismissed that charge last year. He'll hold a hearing on it on Thursday. 5 Oklahoma City police officers will face murder charges in the death of a teenage robbery suspect.
The officers will be charged with manslaughter after the fatal shooting of 15-year-old Stavian Rodriguez in November. They were responding to reports of an attempted armed robbery at a convenience store. TV news video appears to show Rodriguez dropping a gun. He raises his hands, then lowers them, reaching for his back pocket before cops open fire. At the time, police said he failed to comply with their orders. The shooting led to protests. The department's Fraternal Order of Police says the officers acted lawfully. They remain on paid administrative leave. Tom Rigotti, Fox News.
Austin, Texas has issued an arrest warrant for one of its police officers, Christopher Taylor, charged with the murder last April and the shooting of a drug suspect who was later discovered to be unarmed. Consumer prices increased 0.4 of a point last month, the biggest gain in 6 months, led by a sharp jump in gas prices. But the Labor Department reports core inflation, excluding food and energy, posted a much smaller gain. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
on demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
Half a day, this is Honey. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Sunday brunch at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro is back. Come and enjoy Mezcla's true taste of Guam. Open for 2 seatings at 10:30 a.m. and 12:30 p.m. $28.95 for adults and $14.95 for kids 5 to 11 years old. Call 479-2652 or 2653 for reservations. Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Good way to start a radio program if that radio program is constitutional, conservative, and correct. The 3 C's of talk radio here on Tall Tales. So let's go straight to Zemi Ikotny. Today, the Daily News screwed up. They had their regular editorial, which I'm not going to waste much time with. And then they ran a column by someone named Christian Schneider. Nice name, Christian Schneider. Schneider is the German word for cutter.
Oh.
Yeah. Or tailor.
Uh-huh.
So that's a nice combination, right? And his column is actually worth spending a little time with, so I'm going to do that instead of the regular Daily News editorial. On March 2, Democrat Rhode Island Senator Sheldon Whitehouse posted a tweet in which he calls January 6 the pro-Trump rioters ransacked, the day the pro-Trump rioters ransacked the Capitol, a day that will live in infamy, but adds that January 8 may prove to be a day of greater consequence. Backed by music likely deemed too depressing to be used in the film Manchester by the Sea, Whitehouse condemns a case accepted by the Supreme Court that will determine whether donors to nonprofit organizations have the right to keep their information private if those nonprofit groups engage in anything that resembles politics. To prove his case, Whitehouse, who is found of attending Senate hearings with elaborate charts alleging conspiracies between Republican elected officials and these types of nonprofits, says we should, quote, look at the flock of dark money front groups that urge the conservative majority Supreme Court to take the case. On the tweeted video, he alleges that, quote, dark money forces shepherded the last 3 justices onto the Supreme Court. So dark money forces, that's the new villain. But when White House video scrolls through its list of those contemptible right-wing dark money groups, he leaves off some crucial information. Yes, among the groups that supported that court taking the case were notable right-wing groups like Americans for Prosperity, the Institute for Justice, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and others. But White House's list was missing groups like the ACLU. That's not a right-wing group, in case you didn't notice. The NAACP and the Human Rights Campaign, which has nothing to do with human rights and everything to do with sexual anarchy. All politically progressive groups that filed amicus briefs supporting the right of donors to keep their information private. The issue of donor disclosure by non-private groups has once again surfaced in legislative form as H.R. 1, a bill passed by the Democrat-controlled House last week, applies new disclosure regulations to groups engaging in political speech. A number of the bill's speech regulations echo those of the famous Bipartisan Campaign Reform Act, colloquially known as McCain-Feingold, which has subsequently been dismantled by the Supreme Court on First Amendment grounds. The most famous of these rulings, of course, was 2010's Citizen United versus the Federal Election Commission, which effectively got the government out of the business of banning movies, books, and campaign ads critical of politicians. Interestingly enough, Citizens United, the subject matter of that case was a movie about Hillary, which I think was called Hillary the Movie. And it was very critical of Hillary Clinton.
Not about the mountain climber? Hillary?
Oh, yeah. No. Nor about, what's his name, Alec Baldwin's wife. Or, of course, she's Hilaria. Right?
Hilaria, yeah.
Hilaria. Yeah, so those same political speech protections extend to anonymous speech, which has been a cornerstone of advocacy since a trio of founding fathers banged out the Federalist Papers under the name Publius. Benjamin Franklin famously wrote political tomes under the names of Benevolus, Silence Dogwood, Caelia Shortface, and Martha Careful. Anonymous political speech allows a speaker to criticize the government without fear of retribution from that same government. Thus, the anonymous letter. In one of the first landmark free speech cases, Schenck versus the United States, the Supreme Court upheld a conviction against socialist Charles Schenck, who printed leaflets urging U.S. citizens to oppose the draft leading up to World War I. Schenck had spent $125 to mail his flyers opposing conscription and was sentenced to 6 months in prison. Similarly, speech disclosure regulations by the government open individuals who want to quietly support political causes up to bullying and harassment. In the 1950s, Alabama cracked down on the NAACP, demanding to see a list of its members. But in 1958, the Supreme Court found in favor of NAACP, ruling that compelled disclosure of affiliation groups with groups in advocacy may constitute an effective restraint on freedom of speech. So there we are. The point being that anonymous speech is essential in a free society for the proper discourse of civilians who criticize their government. Now, I suppose I ought to try that myself. Yeah, I'm not going to tell you what my name is the next time I say something that Lou doesn't like. because I don't want to wind up carrying my head home in a basket. Off with their heads, she said. All right, so we'll go on from here to the Post editorial. I got to get my Facebook page back up here. I lost it for a second. Yeah, I got to make sure that I know who's there. Let's see, we got who's there already. We've got Janice Wong. Boy, Janice Wong is usually the first one there. Good job, Janice Wong. And Sandra Regis is pretty close to being first. And this guy, Rob, is on it like a hawk. Who else is there? Colin Clark. Good man. All right.
Hoffa Brown.
Yeah, Hoffa Brown. Okay, let's go to the Post editorial. Solutions needed to keep streets safe, deter dangerous driving. I have a suggestion before I get into this editorial. Let's have a law that no cars should become airborne. I don't know if maybe our chief of police doesn't have jurisdiction over that. Maybe that's the FAA. Police continue to investigate the horrific crash in Dededo that killed one person and sent another to the hospital. We sent our condolences to the family members, and we say a prayer of thanksgiving that no one else was hurt. That stretch of road, West Santa Monica Avenue, is a residential area in a school zone. It's a narrow road with 2 lanes and homes on either side. Alongside those homes are Wettengale Elementary School, football fields, and Northern Regional Community Health Center. Further down the avenue are small mom-and-pop stores that attract a lot of pedestrian traffic, and Benevente Middle School. Even as early as 5:30 a.m., there could be children walking to school with parents, or people walking or driving to the nearest store, or even going to the public health center to line up early for COVID-19 tests. The speed limit in the area is 15 miles per hour. As of Wednesday afternoon, police were investigating the factors in the crash. We know the roads were likely wet from recent rain showers. There's also the likely possibility that speed was a factor. What police has confirmed is that shortly before 6 a.m., a blue Toyota Corolla was motoring east on West Santa Monica when the male operator lost control of the vehicle. The vehicle ran off the roadway and slammed into a concrete wall by the Hal Sharoma football field. Pieces of the car were strewn across the road. This is the island's 3rd official traffic fatality, and it could have been worse considering where it took place. Not far from Wednesday morning's crash site was the area where a man who admitted to taking crystal methamphetamine and then drinking alcohol passed out while driving near Benevente Middle. The driver ran into a group of government officials who were, ironically, on the sidewalk near the school trying to figure out how to make the area safer for students and other pedestrians as well as drivers. Something must be done to help deter dangerous driving on Guam's roads, especially when those frequently traversed by other drivers and pedestrians, and where people want to have a Chinese restaurant. On Naval Base Guam, there used to be a torn-up vehicle laid out by the side of the road as a visual reminder of the consequences of driving while impaired or taking risks when driving. I think we have those along almost all of our roads, but they're stripped of their wheels. I don't think that's going to work.
Every village has 2.
Yeah. Police need to be present and visible, which means the administration and the legislature need to find ways to help the police department get the vehicles and police officers they need to step up patrols in the villages, where hopefully they'll also deter crimes. Perhaps a law could be passed that would prohibit the chief of police to use officers for patrol checks on his house to guard his motorcycle. It can't stop there, though. The court system can't just let folks who have been arrested for driving while intoxicated go free. There have been instances where people were arrested, then released while waiting their day in court, were arrested. Yet again, for DWI. Worse yet, there have been at least one case where a man who was on pretrial release for a DWI charge hit a motorcycle and ran over the driver. Yeah, these stories must do more than make us wince or say a prayer. They must propel us into action. Otherwise, we'll see more than just schools and homes by the side of the roads. We'll see more flowers and crosses laid out in memorial to those whose lives were taken when someone decided it was okay to get into a car drunk or high, or that it's okay to speed down a road in a residential area and school zone. Sometimes the government needs to step in and save people from themselves. This is one of those instances. We would hope that Chief of Police Steve Ignacio would pay more attention to the police and less attention to his motorcycle. End of editorial. Okay, Post. Good enough, but not a blue star for today. All right, let's go straight to the card. And here's my program summary. Steve Ignacio says he still doesn't know what's cooking at Jerry Kitchen. Some cops came forward to clue him in. Stay tuned for the oversight of the police department on March 17. The GOP has its own Green New Deal, and it mentions Guam. Talina is appalled. Yeah. All right, so let's start out with more Steve Ignacio. We start out with a note about Jerry Kitchen. Now, for those who may have been comatose for the last several days, let's see, the night that bars were allowed to reopen, about 1 o'clock that morning, a car was driving northbound on Marine Corps Drive, took a hard left, jumped over the median, crossed the southbound lane, jumped over the curb, drove across the parking lot, drove through the front windows of Jerry Restaurant, inside the restaurant, and knocked down a wall. Pretty serious, right? So you're probably wondering, well, I wonder what jail cell that guy is in. Well, he's not, and we don't even know who he is, because the arresting officer, who is a real champion of justice, cited him for imprudent driving. Imprudent driving. And the chief of police, ever since then, has really shied away from the whole thing, although there's an abundance of curiosity about what actually happened. A lot of conspiracy theories, because one of the passengers in the car was a police officer, an off-duty police officer who happens to be the daughter of the senator who was in charge of criminal justice, Pito Terlahi. And I'm looking through my stacks of papers for the famous sayings of the chief. Oh, here it is, right in front of me. Yeah. So, Chief Ignacio here has been really non-committal on the whole thing. The last time anybody, the media, Daily News tried to call him or Sergeant Paul Tapau, they didn't return calls. But in response to almost a community outcry of what in the world is going on here at Jerry Restaurant, given that there was an off-duty police officer in the car, no DWI test was given, the lightest possible citation next to a parking ticket was given for somebody who created this almost thrill driver show. If you could have got that on video, you probably could have sold it to one of these TV stations. The car was actually airborne at one time. So, you know, everybody is thinking, man, they're covering up something. You know, the chief does not want us to know who the driver of that car was. And nobody wants to know whether that driver was drunk or not, especially the officer on the scene, Officer Champion. And then, of course, we're thinking, wow, one of the people there was an off-duty cop. Maybe she was driving. Maybe that's why the chief is saying this. But the chief put the entire community at ease with this statement. I have no information, even from the get-go, that there was a cover-up in this crash. No! Yeah. How could anybody say such a... Wait a minute. Wait just a second. I was going to say, how can anybody say such a thing with a straight face? I forgot we're not talking about Gura here. We're talking about the police department. But that's one of the dumber public statements I've heard in a long, long time. Chief, if there were a cover-up, the idea is that maybe they don't want you to know about it. Or second alternative, you were part of the cover-up and you're not going to rat yourself out. Either way, your statement makes absolutely no sense at all. And as far as the editorial board at the Post, to expect performance from this guy, I think, is a real long shot. I've gone through a list of some of the stuff he's done, you know, assigning police officers to do patrol checks on his house so that his motorcycle isn't stolen, equivocating on whether he would want to bring back a cop who was so drunk he couldn't remember or he didn't know what happened the night that his service weapon was used to kill another cop, who says that when gambling turned up at the judiciary, people were engaged in apparently illegal gambling at the judiciary. The chief said, I don't have jurisdiction over the judiciary. It's just one comedy of errors after another. And I know a lot of the younger folks don't remember the Keystone Cops. Do you remember that, Jose?
I know who they are.
Yeah.
What a mess.
It's a cliche, the Keystone Cops. So maybe that's where Chief Ignacio belongs. Maybe if he went to Hollywood and the Keystone Cops were a comedy feature back in the days of silent movies, maybe somebody would like to do a 21st century sequel. And Chief Ignacio could be the chief of the Keystone Cops. I have no information, even from the get-go, that there was a cover-up in this crash.
Maybe he was doing a Karnak the Magnificent impression.
Yeah.
Wearing a turban with putting an envelope up to his forehead.
Right. And that's
no undercover.
Yeah. Yeah. And the clue is people are saying that there's more to this Jerry Restaurant accident than meets the eye. And the chief goes, I have no information, even from the get-go, that there was a cover-up in this crash. Here's Johnny. So, here's an article about Jerry Kitchen. Jerry Lee and more than a handful of his staff spent Monday morning gathering up broken tables and chairs, washing the kitchen area and sweeping up the glass shards at his Tamuning restaurant, Jerry Kitchen. It was nearly 2 weeks ago that the driver of a Jeep crashed through the front glass window and drove straight through the dining area toward the kitchen. This guy must have been really hungry. Okay, let's take a short break here.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So, returning back to Jerry Kitchen, it was nearly 2 weeks ago that the driver of a Jeep crashed through the front glass window and drove straight through the dining area toward the kitchen. Quote, somebody drove the car into the restaurant, said Lee as he recalled what he saw the night of February 24 crash. There was all this damage. The renowned chef opened the Hong Kong-style restaurant in 2017. The Jeep also knocked out an entire wall near the kitchen. We have to repair the wall and the bar that is totally damaged. The window is all gone. Lee said he continues to calculate just how much damage was caused by the crash. The restaurant's tableware and linens were placed into the back of a pickup truck as the cleaning continued inside. When asked how long he estimates before business will be back and running, he said, "We don't know. Depends on how many cars run into our restaurant. Maybe a couple months. When we open, I hope customers come back. I just hope the chief of police doesn't." Okay, on Friday, Guam Chief of Police Steve Ignacio confirmed that he relaunched the investigation into the crash. How can you relaunch something that was never launched in the first place?
The Jeep was launched.
That's very true. I forgot about that. GPD highway patrol officers are now leading the investigation. Ignacio noted, quote, growing community concern. Wow, he picked that up. After he said one of his officers, who was off duty at the time, was a passenger in the Jeep. The case is still classified as an auto runoff roadway. The unnamed driver was given a citation by responding officers, but was not given a sobriety test. The chief said that, too, is being investigated. Lee said the driver appeared to be a young lady, but he did not know anyone who was in the Jeep. The driver appeared to be a young lady. The off-duty police officer was a young lady. 2 + 2.
How can they appear? Don't they take licenses and all that information is on the license?
Well, one would think so, but Jerry Kitchen doesn't want to give us a police report, and I suspect that no one has asked for it, so we're kind of in the dark on that. But I wonder how Jerry Kitchen could say that if he wasn't there.
And he's not a part of the cover-up.
Well, I don't think so. Lee said the driver appeared to be a young lady, but he did not know anyone who was in the Jeep. Maybe the Jeep was still there when he got there. Maybe they were still hanging out. Yeah. How come they didn't check if DWI or something, Lee said. However, Lee said his priority is getting his restaurant reopened for his customers to once again enjoy his food and for his employees to get back to work. I will worry about my business first. I don't know what will happen, he said. I would suggest, Jerry, that you build some kind of like a tank barrier between your restaurant and the highway, given the police department's almost total lack of interest in what happened to your restaurant. And the chief admits, let's see, where is that? Ignacio noted growing community concern. He noted growing community concern. So if the community, I guess that was the plan. We'll just keep it on the down low. If nobody says anything, no harm, no foul, we'll just disappear into the night. I hope I have to take some of the blame for this.
Well, at least one person will.
Yeah. Okay, and then the other event here for the Steve Ignacio, the continuing story of Steve Ignacio. In exactly 1 week, the Legislative Committee on Public Safety will hold an oversight hearing on the Guam Police Department. This is in response to the repeated allegations of misconduct and public corruption by the law enforcement agency that were brought to light in District Court of Guam extortion and drug-related cases. Committee Chairman Senator Jose Terlaje has passed the torch to his colleague, Vice Chairman Senator Frank Blas Jr., to conduct the oversight due to a conflict of interest. Terlaje's son, former Department of Corrections Deputy Director Joey Terlaje, was named in the federal cases of having a role in the allegations, specifically being present at a barbecue with other law enforcement personnel where a woman was allegedly held hostage and beaten. As we reported earlier this month, the Legislative Committee on Justice held an oversight with the judiciary of Guam, where Senator Jose Terlaje questioned the judicial branch on this particular allegation if there were any reports. The judiciary, however, stated they are restricted from commenting on any ongoing proceedings presently before the court. So this is a case of you can make a statement by phrasing it as a question. And that's what he did. What was there ever a report made to the court about my son? Well, we can't answer that. See?
I know.
The oversight with GPD is scheduled for March 17. Happy St. Patrick's Day, Steve. All right.
We won't know what makes the legislatures turn green. The testimonies or St. Patrick's Day beer.
Right. Okay, moving on to the next item in the card here. This is Moylan versus the Organic Act. Yeah. Senator Jim Moylan, formerly known as James Woke Moylan. But he hasn't introduced any woke bills this time around, so maybe he got over it. Bill aims to require drug tests of candidates. Although senators at Wednesday's public hearing on Bill 56 supported the intent of the measure, some lawmakers said they'd like to see the bill reshaped. Senator Jim Moylan's Bill 56 would add a section to the law requiring candidates running for elected office to submit drug test results to the Guam Election Commission within 3 days of taking the test. Like police and court clearances already required of candidates, Moylan said it would be another report. I bet Ray Gibson is really going to like this. We do know that we have a rise in drug-related cases on island, so I believe it's important that our electorate get assurance when seeking our trust when they go into the voting booths toward these individuals having a drug-free lifestyle, Moylan said. It's vital that our position not conflict with any drug usage. It's vital that our position not conflict with any drug usage. In other words, if you're using drugs, being a senator shouldn't conflict with that. I don't think that's what you meant, Doug. I mean, Jim. Senator Jose San Augustine said he's in favor of this measure and noted that it has to be coordinated. If you want to run for office, get tested. Yeah, if you want to run for office, get tested, San Augustine said. He said he'll work with Moylan and the Election Commission on the measure so there's a mechanism in place and it's a coordinated effort. Maybe people ought to go down to the Election Commission, ask for a cup, absent themselves to the nearest toilet. That way we would know there would be no invalid tests, right? And I'm sure the Election Commission would like to take on this burden. Maybe we could establish a more reasonable and sensible definition of the word random, San Augustine said, adding senators should look to the way the military conducts random drug testing so it doesn't conflict with legal concerns over unreasonable searches and intrusions, suggesting that San Augustine would like to have random drug tests at the legislature. Now, I got to stop here and ask a question. Is there a drug problem at the legislature? Have we seen, when you're watching TV, do you see one senator dealing drugs to a couple of other senators back in the corner?
At the onset, I don't see a cover-up.
Well, that Steve Ignacio, the 21st century reincarnation of Sherlock Holmes, would say there was no cover-up from the get-go.
I do sometimes question some of the language in these bills, but I don't think it's drugs.
So, I don't think there's any problem with drugs at the legislature. I don't know, but there certainly are no symptoms. So keeping drugs out of the legislature, well, let me put it this way. Keeping dope out of the legislature is something we really should do. We got enough dopes in there already. We don't need any more. Yeah. The measure should have some teeth, said Senator Tello Taitigui. She said if a person knows when they will take the test, she's heard there are ways to flush drugs out of one's system ahead of time.
She's heard.
She's heard that. This is kind of the reverse of asking for a friend. Yeah. Senator Joanne Brown supported the bill, but said marijuana should be included in the test results. Yeah, but I think it was Senator Shelton that added something to the budget that said enforcing drug laws against marijuana should be our lowest priority. So I don't know how that would fit. Cannabis was legalized in Guam in 2019. Senator Jose Pito Terlahi said he's for Bill 56, and his only qualm is if a person is seeking public office and they lose, they spent money on the drug test. Wow, what a waste. Yeah, so Pito, when the bill hits the floor, make an amendment that if a candidate loses, the government will reimburse the cost of the drug test. All right, we have cockamamie ideas come down the road from time to time. And Jim, so far you're the champion. Here's what our Organic Act says. This is at Section 48 U.S.C. Section 1423F, Qualifications of Members. No person shall sit in a legislature who is not a citizen of the United States, who has not attained the age of 25, and who has not been domiciled in Guam for at least 5 years immediately preceding the sitting of the legislature in which he seeks to qualify as a member, or has been convicted of a felony or of a crime involving moral turpitude and has not received a pardon restoring his civil rights. So you got to be a resident. You got to be a resident for 5 years. You got to be a United States citizen. You got to be 25, and you can't be a convict. You can't have criminal convictions in your background. Are there any other qualifications to be a senator? Nope. That's it. How much authority does the Guam legislature have to add qualifications to those provided by 48 USC 1423F? Answer, none. None at all.
The only authority to change the Organic Act is Congress?
That's right. So, Jim, you introduced your bill in the wrong forum. You might want to get a hold of Mike San Nicolas if you feel that strongly about this. And while I'm at it, you've heard Ray kvetch about how difficult it is for anyone to perfect his candidacy, talking about the police clearance, et cetera. That is likewise inorganic. So in order for the bill, for the law to read the way Jim Moylan would like it to read, it would say, no person shall sit in the legislature who is not a citizen of the United States, who has not attained an age of 25, who has not been domiciled in Guam for 5 years immediately preceding the seating the legislature in which he wants to be a member, has in his possession a police clearance and a court clearance and a drug test not older than 3 days, etc. That's not what the Organic Act says, and you can't make it say that. But I suppose there's a glitch here. Because, when I ran myself, I knew that this was the law. And I knew that this police clearance thing was bogus. It was inorganic. It was actually unenforceable. But how do you take that on when you're running for office? Right? You don't want to say, well, I want to run for the legislature, but first I'm going to bring suit against the Election Commission because I don't want to turn in a police clearance. Well, what are you afraid of? Are you a criminal or something like that? So it's something that should be done away with, Jim. If you really wanted to do the people a favor, do away with it. And if you want to prescribe something, a declaration under penalty of perjury with respect to all of the items in the Organic Act, with an extra serious penalty for filing a false application, then you got something going for you. But you're not going to be able to drug test members of the legislature or the governor or the lieutenant governor, etc. Probably not even the mayors.
Yeah, that's how they got Marion Barry over there.
Yeah.
Mayor Marion Barry in D.C.
That's right. But they caught him in the act.
Oh, yeah?
On tape.
He got reelected, though.
Yeah, after he got out of jail, he was reelected. Okay, Jim, so back to the drawing board on this one.
It makes for good political fodder.
It does.
That's about it, but I can't see it happening. And then you have somebody here on Facebook said that there was a case where drug testing for elected officials was deemed not legal, but they didn't state what state.
Well, there's a case called Powell versus McCormick. Adam Clayton Powell was a congressman from New York, and I can't remember McCormick's first name, but he was the Speaker of the House. And Powell had a really bad reputation. He had a judgment against him in the state of New York. And New York had a law that process wouldn't issue to collect a debt on Sunday. So Powell only showed up in New York on Sunday. If at all. The rest of the time he spent in the Bahamas. He basically lived in the Bahamas.
Wow.
And he had a horrible reputation. And the reason that he had a judgment against him was because he said, not on the floor of the House, but somewhere else, he said that a lady named Esther James was a bag man for drug dealers. Esther took offense, sued him, got a pretty good sized judgment for slander against Adam Clayton Powell. So Adam was basically on the lam. but he kept getting reelected from his district, Harlem district in New York.
Crazy.
So this particular time when he came to be sworn in, the Speaker of the House refused to swear him in because the Constitution says each chamber of the House will be the judge of its own elections. So Powell sued the House of Representatives by suing McCormick, and that's where this rule came out. You know, in order to be a member of the House of Representatives, you got to be 25, you got to be a United States citizen, you got to live for a few days anyhow in the district in which you're going to represent, and that's it. And the House can't add extra requirements to that. So that's where that rule comes from. And it's a good rule because the ability to add stuff like Jim is doing favors incumbents. If you're an incumbent, you want to make it as hard as you can for a challenger to come, for a Sandra Regis, to come and file a huge stack of papers, et cetera, to run for office. Of course, if you're already an incumbent, you've got somebody in your office who takes care of that kind of stuff for you. So these are not good rules, and what we ought to do away with the police clearance and the court clearance, as well as Jim's idea about drug testing. Well, let's take a short break here.
Mezcla Bistro welcomes you this Lenten season with some of your favorite seafood specials, house-made especially for you. Try our fisherman's platter, fish tacos, grilled local catch salad, spicy garlic butter shrimp, candied salmon, and even our creamy lobster patka prau pasta. Don't forget to ask about our Lau Lau Sa Island seafood purse. You will not want to miss this limited-time seafood special, open from Monday through Saturday for lunch and dinner in Agana. Call 479-2652 for reservations. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Make every day epic. The new Samsung Galaxy S21 is here. The Samsung Galaxy S21 offers the highest resolution of photos and videos on a smartphone, which makes it perfect for those TikTok dances or class projects. With a sleek new look, striking design, and a battery that goes all day and beyond. The Samsung Galaxy S21 is epic in every way. Come into GTA today and experience the new Samsung Galaxy S21 and let GTA help you make every day epic. GTA, we start with you.
Okay, so here we are back from our break. And we turn next to Senator Talina Nelson versus MTG. And if you don't know who MTG is, I got a feeling you soon will. MTG is Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Sounds a lot like MTG.
It does. So MTG was the subject of, was on yesterday's card, the Green New Deal versus Guam. Green with an E on the end. So I'm really grateful, as a Republican, I'm really grateful that Marjorie Taylor Greene has come forward in the name of parity, equity, and equality. You know, from the other side of the island, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, also known as AOC, has been getting all the press. Now we have our competitor, Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG. So here's a story about Talina Nelson being appalled by MTG. A first-time this is ran in the Post, a first-time congresswoman from Georgia who mistakenly referred to Guam as a foreign land when she railed against federal financial aid going overseas will soon get cookies from the island that bills itself where America's day begins. Quote, I'm a regular, normal person, and I wanted to make my regular, normal person, normal, everyday American values, which is, and this is Marjorie saying this, she's a a regular, normal person, and I wanted to take my regular, normal person, normal, everyday American values, which is we love our country. We believe our hard-earned tax dollars should go just for America, not for what? China? Russia? The Middle East? Guam? Whatever. Whatever. Wherever, said MTG on the February 27th at the CAP, which headlined former President Donald Trump. If we want to build roads, if we want to put money into schools, if we want to build border walls, we want it right here at home. This is easy to me. It's easy to us, but it's not easy to Washington. Although her speech happened last month, a video of her full remarks was posted to YouTube on Tuesday. And then, you know, bringing us up to date, you know, we know that Guam is part of the United States, etc. Congressman Green is a new member, and we will be paying a visit to her and delivering delicious Chamorro chip cookies as part of our ongoing reach to new members to introduce them to our wonderful island of Guam, said Delegate Michael San Nicolas. He also referred to using cookie diplomacy in Congress during his annual address to the legislature last year. From the governor's office, Director of Communications Crystal Paco San Augustine, formerly known as Crystal Paco, said we would be more than happy to send Representative Green's office a copy of Destiny's Landfall, A History of Guam. That's Bob Rogers' History of Guam, the most recent and probably the most thorough. A two-time former chairman of the Republican Party of Guam, Phil Flores, said he had called Green's office. She wasn't available, so Flores talked to one of her assistants. I said, Guam is part of America. We have been for 122 years, said Flores, who shared with the assistant his role in the Republican Party locally, as well as his 15 to 16-year stint as a member of the Republican National Committee. I'm calling to educate her. Flores said Green's comments and lack of knowledge about Guam was really disappointing. If you see it every once in a while, where's Guam? And obviously we don't expect to be as well known in the mainland as perhaps California and New York, but more people should know about this wonderful part of America. He said there's still a lot of education necessary in some parts of the world about Guam and other Pacific islands and the role they've played historically and in current global affairs. I've done much traveling in Asia, and people in Asia know about Guam, especially here in Korea, Taiwan, Japan. But if you go to some places in the States, they will not know about Guam. Flores said earlier in his career he had come across people who had no idea where Guam was, even so far as placing it in the continent of Africa. He also shared a story of his son who, while attending West Virginia University, actually I think they misspelled, they left a word out here. It's actually West by God Virginia University, if you know anybody from West Virginia. Enjoying it out with his friends would show his Guam ID at a bar or pub. They would not accept his Guam ID because it was from a foreign country, Flores said. Okay, we'll come back to Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, right after the big halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
big relief bill soon to be the law. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News.
The yeas are 220. The nays are 211. The motion is adopted.
Speaker Pelosi presiding Wednesday as the House gave its final approval to the nearly $2 trillion COVID relief bill.
Democrats called the bill a necessary response to a national crisis. But the bill includes what Republicans dub blue state bailouts. $300 billion goes to states to bolster faltering state worker pension programs. The measure prohibits states from cutting taxes if they use their share of the $1.9 trillion. And GOP critics claim $380 billion for schools is a payback to big city teacher unions, with much of the education funding not even being spent for 2 years.
Fox's Chad Pergram at the Capitol. President Biden will sign the bill on Friday. It's been a year since the coronavirus outbreak was declared to be a global pandemic. The president ordering another 100 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, saying,
"A vaccinated American is the only way to beat the pandemic, get our economy back on track, and for us to get back our lives and our loved ones."
The president says every American who wants one will have access to the vaccine by Memorial Day, and leftover doses will be offered to foreign countries who need them. The Albany Times-Union reporting the latest woman to accuse New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo of sexual misconduct says Cuomo groped her in his residence. That's triggering more calls for his resignation.
Before these latest details came out, 76 state lawmakers wanted Cuomo out. Now, by our count, that number is 85, and it's expected to continue to grow. Democrat Assemblyman Ron Kim tells Fox News a group of female lawmakers are circulating a letter demanding the governor step down immediately in light of these new allegations.
The governor denies the charges. America is listening to Fox News.
Chili's has the seafood you crave and the flavors you love this Lenten season. Indulge in delicious Lent-friendly soups, salads, appetizers, and entrees, like our loaded baked potato soup, quesadilla explosion salad, our savory Cajun shrimp pasta, or our mouth-watering grilled ancho salmon. Ask about our black bean burger options, like our tasty mushroom Swiss or old-timer with cheese. This is a limited-time offer, so hurry in and enjoy all the tasty Lent options this Lenten season. We're located on the second floor of Two Montans Plaza. At Chili's, savor the moment.
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
An agreement's been reported to reopen the country's second-largest school district to in-person classes.
The head of the Los Angeles Teachers Union, Cecily Mayart Cruz, announced with the LA school superintendent the tentatively agreed-upon details of a plan to reopen classrooms to in-person learning in April, including vaccines for all staff members, money for extra PPEs, daily on-site deep cleaning of buildings, a mask mandate.
Educators have not been standing in the way of a safe return.
The plan calls for elementary schools to reopen first, but only for half days in a staggered schedule, after which middle and high schoolers will come back and continue learning online, moving from class to class on Zoom, but from campus grounds. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
Governor Tate Reeves has signed into law a bill that bans transgender athletes in Mississippi who were born male from competing on girls' or women's sports teams. A court challenge is likely, but more than 20 other states are considering similar bans. Japan holding a nationwide moment of silence to mark 10 years since a massive earthquake and tsunami left an estimated 20,000 people dead. One of the big car rental companies is being sued by a customer who says they cost him almost 5 years of his life.
Herbert Alford spent nearly 5 years in custody for a murder he didn't commit. A receipt from Hertz would have proved his innocence, but Alford claims the company didn't retrieve it for years, which led to his conviction of the 2011 murder. Hertz admits the company couldn't find the receipt right away when it was requested in 2015, but a spokesperson says the company did make good faith efforts and promptly gave it to lawyers when they did find it. Alford was convicted of murder in a shooting in a Lansing neighborhood, but the receipts showed that Alford was in fact renting a car at an airport about 20 minutes away. Rob Dawson, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
The The vaccine is officially here, and we aren't just talking about the COVID vaccine, but a financial vaccine at Bank Pacific. We may not be doctors, but we can help you with your financial health. Whether to take advantage of today's crazy low rates, or just a local bank that has your back. At Bank Pacific, we want to help make 2021 your best year yet. Because for 66 years, where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
Mezcla Bistro welcomes you this Lenten season with some of your favorite seafood specials, house-made especially for you. Try our fisherman's platter, fish tacos, grilled local catch salad, spicy garlic butter shrimp, candied salmon, and even our creamy lobster pad cup prowl pasta. Don't forget to ask about our Lau Lau Style Island seafood purse. You will not want to miss this limited-time seafood special, open from Monday through Saturday for lunch and dinner in Agana. Call 479-2652 for reservations. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Listen to The Point. Any speaker, anytime. Check us out on your FM radio at 93.3, 104.3 HD3, thepoint.gu, Facebook Live, YouTube Live, and tune in. And announcing radio.com. Download the app and hear The Point. Get the latest news, sports, entertainment, and more.
On demand.
Your phone is digital. Your life is digital. And we are too. 93.3, The Point.
So we're still talking about Marjorie Taylor Greene, MTG, the Republican equivalent of AOC, who apparently at a meeting of the COC spoke in such a manner as to give the idea that she thinks Guam is a foreign country. So I think the governor handled it pretty well. Crystal Paco San Augustine said they were going to send a copy of Robert Rogers' Destiny Landfall to Greene, and Mike San Nicolas said that he was going to visit her office and give her a box of Chamorro cookies.
I could use some cookies in a book.
Well, do you think Guam's a foreign country?
Absolutely.
Okay, you get them then.
I'll send you my address.
All right. Yeah, I don't think he wants to mail to a foreign country. That's the thing.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
Extra postage.
Yeah. So, and then Phil Flores relates some of the experience he's had. But Talina Nelson comes in and lives up to exactly what I predicted yesterday. Yesterday, my prediction was this is a golden opportunity for us to get some national press that can help us identify ourselves in the eyes of the American people as part of America. And I said if I had the power to do it, I would tell the Visitors Bureau to send a ticket to visit Guam to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Bring her out here. Think of all the earned media we could get out of that. And that earned media, of course, convinces everybody that Guam is not a foreign country. In other words, the first words out of our mouths should be, lighten up. Lighten up. But my prediction yesterday was that there will be people who see this as another opportunity to engage in grievance politics. Oh, disrespecting Guam. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a racist. They have no respect for our culture and heritage and tradition and on and on and on and on. And I haven't been to Facebook, but I understand there's enough of that to go around, right, Jose?
Absolutely. Have you seen the video or picture where she said this that's been posted?
No.
There's another triggering thing, I think. I absolutely don't think it's really much about Guam,
Uh-huh.
but it has to do with the mask that she's wearing that says Trump won.
Oh, my goodness. Well, that's for the grievance politics, folks. That's just suspicions confirmed. Of course, this would be a Trumpster. So rather than maneuver ourselves around again so we can cast ourselves as victims and present ourselves as the oppressed to that great oppressor, the United States of America, this time in the persona of Marjorie Taylor Greene, we should lighten up, and we should use this as a tremendous advantage for good press for the island. Invite her to come over here, give her cookies, send her a history of Guam, etc. But the whole grievance politics thing is pretty well embedded, and of course it's part and parcel of what the separatists do, no matter what the issue is. So Talina Nelson picks it up, and Talina, who chairs the legislative committee that includes federal affairs, said the comments were appalling. Coming from a member of Congress. They were appalling. This is not the first time, nor will it be the last, that our island is mistaken for foreign soil, when the fact remains we've been woven into the fabric of the United States for over a century. Our mutually beneficial relationship with the United States has long afforded us many privileges. However, our people and our many contributions remain unknown and unimportant to many Americans. This urges us to not only continue making our island known, but also amplify our voices and employ our national and federal governments to give Guahan and our people the committed support we need in our quest for self-determination. No! Yeah, this was so obvious, you know. I guess she was the first one to get it out. But, you know, everything is not about self-determination. And I gave a little speech to the Rotary Club last week about Chamorro self-determination. We haven't made an effort towards decolonization of Guam since 1981. Not a single effort. We have a commission for the decolonization of Guam by the self-determination of the Chamorro people. Well, if you're going to decolonize Guam, you kind of got to decolonize the whole thing. You can't decolonize it for some of the folks that live here. What are you going to do with the rest of them? To me, this is a hoax. You know, this whole thing about self-determination, the grievance politics, you know, no one ever paid any attention to us, et cetera, et cetera. And even in this context, when a senator says something stupid, when a member of the House says something stupid that we could really use to our advantage, we can't resist. We gotta get in there with our grievance politics and our quest for self-determination. Now, when Hank Johnson, also a member of the House from Georgia, they can really pick him down there, can't they? Yeah. When he said that in response to plans for the Marine Corps build-up here in Guam, he said, isn't there a possibility to put so many people there that the island will tip over and capsize? That would have been a really good time for someone to come forward and say, Hank, you should help us with self-determination. Yeah. So it's hard for me. And of course, this is the same Talina Nelson who told us about the 1982 case that she didn't have. And I went through that whole story. So I somehow don't think that righteous indignation lies very well with Talina, because if you're going to display righteous indignation, the first element of that is you have to be righteous. And I don't think you're very righteous when you come along talking about a 1982 case that you don't even have. That to me is gaslighting. Okay, I noticed I had two and I lost one already, huh? Who was that?
First one was Greg. He just wanted to talk a little bit about green, and same thing with our Keith.
Okay, well, maybe Greg can call back, but I'll pick up our Keith right now. Good afternoon, our Keith.
Good afternoon, Bob. As usual, you're spot on in your analysis of all this. It is so very predictable and so very useful for the useful idiots. There's bread lines. The economy's still in the toilet. The government of Guam is bungling the whole response from start to finish. But a white woman in Georgia said something stupid and impolitic, or rather ignorant, not stupid, ignorant and impolitic. So yes, please, let's blow this way out of proportion, bring all sorts of grievance politics in, and it's so predictable. And I'm glad you brought the Hank Johnson analogy in, because that makes for a very interesting comparison. Toledo, I lost my entire train of thought. To the folks that are, buying into the usual schlock, this is yet another example of racist USA or the imperial USA or whatever have you, and they don't know us and they don't recognize us. I tell you what, let's engage in a couple elementary school lessons. We'll start with math. Guam has 150,000 people. The United States has 365 million. I would put to anybody, I could find some places like the United States, cities of 150,000 or 500,000 or even a million. And I dare say a healthy number of people here wouldn't be able to find them more on the map. Yes, in the big scheme of things, 150,000 people and Guam, it's not really much on the radar. Militarily, geopolitically, yes. But it's not because of any intended malfeasance on part of the American people or the American government. It's simple numbers, people. Calm down. Secondly, I wonder how many of these said same people who are wailing and gnashing their teeth at the imperial USA and it's an opportunity for tomorrow self-determination and all this, are eagerly awaiting their check from said same dictatorship and evil empire.
Good point, Arkeith.
You can't have it both ways, folks. If you want, the checks coming from the mainland are what kept this island floating. Not in the Hank Johnson sort of way, but financially. If you don't like it and you want to toss it, just realize what the implications are going to be. Those checks aren't, those billions of dollars are not going to be flowing back into the island. So beware of the old, bite the hand that feeds you. Yes, Marjorie Greene said something ignorant. She needs to be educated. Fine. But this really is a non-story. The only reason it is a story is because, as you so eloquently put it, it's a useful tool for the Marxist left and the social justice warriors. Copies of the speech are available at the front desk.
Well, you got it, Keith.
Thanks. Have a nice day.
Thanks for calling. It's our Keith. Maybe Greg will call back, huh? Greg, give us a buzz back. I'd like to hear from you. Once again, this is really a great opportunity, but we have the ability here sometimes to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Well, we could play this as the victim, talk a lot about self-determination, and get some press out of that, and cause people in mainland to think, well, do those people out on Guam, do they want to be independent of the United States? Is that what they're after? I've made this observation before. You know, instead of this constantly whining and crying about our victim status here, which the separatists can't stop doing, you know, how we've been mistreated for 400 years, we've been subject of colonialism, and we've never been given a chance, and on and on and on, which really isn't very accurate if you go back to Guam history from between 1945 and 1950. It's not too accurate at all. But instead of doing that, I would much rather see the island advance as a strong benefit to the United States of America. We're tough people out here. We've handled typhoons here on Guam that would make the average person in the mainland dig a hole and pull the hole in after himself. And we have a generation of people that lived through an extremely rough occupation by Japanese forces, the only people under the American flag that had to endure that. And they not only endured, but they thrived and brought forth, you know, a couple more generations of pretty tough people. And when Kim Jong-un was doing all of his saber rattling, we didn't run for our bomb shelters or something like that. The way I put it, we went head to head with Kim Jong-un, and he blinked first. So as far as the military is concerned, people talk about the culture, but the military has been part of the culture here going way back before the time anybody alive now was born. My old friend Scamby being a pretty good example. Scamby's grandfather was in the United States Navy, and he wound up here in 1902 at the end of the Spanish-American War. Now, odd as it sounds, we'd recognize Scambaluri as a Chamorro name, except in Italy where they'd claim it too. And the same with Nelson and a lot of other, Paul McDonald Calvo, and on and on and on and on. So the military and the folks of Guam have lived together for a long, long time. And before it was the American military, it was the Spanish military. I got a feeling that's why you see so many Cruzes and Santoses on the island. An awful lot of Hispanic surnames on the island. So it's not like like there was this harsh occupation like in East Germany or something like that. It's been a symbiotic relationship between the military and the local folks. And, you know, even the language has imported military terms. For instance, the average person here on the island is not waiting for a ride. He's waiting for his transportation. You ever heard that, Jose? Yeah, waiting for my transportation. And when you walk into a house and you don't know if anybody is there and you want to kind of call out to the folks in the house, you say, "Hoy, hoy." Just like if you're on a ship and you're heading towards shore and you want to alert people on shore that you're arriving, you holler, "Ahoy!" So this grievance politics is attempting to stir up ill will where none has really existed for a long, long time. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is a classic vehicle for this. Oh, she said she disrespected Guam. Therefore, you know, we have to get all up in arms and make a case out of this. I wouldn't be surprised if somebody will say, "We got to take this to the UN." Yeah, when it really is a golden opportunity for us to get some really favorable press for the island and make some new friends in the House of Representatives. This could be a real boon for Michael San Nicolas. Michael, I would hope, takes advantage of this and goes on the evening entertaining talk shows, and presents himself as the only member of the United States Congress from a foreign country. Whoa. Yeah. But I'm sure that our small but very vocal band of separatists will find some way to make this work against us instead of for us. All right, I got somebody in the green room here. It's Dr. Ron McNinch. How you doing, Ron?
Hey, happy day, Senator. Happy day, Guam. I think the problem is members of the House of Representatives who are from Georgia, because the last time we ended up having a headache from the House of Representatives was when, I guess, Representative Hank from the Atlanta area said that he was afraid Guam was going to tip over. And, I think that might be a little bit of the riddle. But
well, Ron, if you stop to think about it, nobody from Georgia does us any favors. There's Hank Johnson and MTG, and what's that guy's name at the unit? Go on with your story.
That's my point, I think. So I think that in general, and by the way, I was educated I just thought about this the other day, my entire education, absent 1 year in New Jersey, was in the state of Georgia. So I think that from my time I was in, I think I only went to kindergarten in New Jersey, and actually the 8th grade. So I went 2 years out of K through 12, and then all of my college education was in Georgia. So, but I think in general, a couple of things, and I always remind people of this. I hope everyone studies Guam's interim war history and just pull up Guampedia and take a look. What happened was the Guam Congress met in 1947. They petitioned the U.S. Congress for an Organic Act in U.S. citizenship. It was stuck in committee for a couple of years. In 1949, there were tensions between the Navy governor and the Guam Congress over licensing disputes primarily. And so the Guam Congress at that time submitted another request to the U.S. Congress for an Organic Act in U.S. citizenship, and then walked out and said, we're not coming back until we get those things. And the U.S. worked with Guam and did that. And I think that set up, at least initially, most of the tools our government leaders needed to do anything with the federal government. There's a very important part of the Guam Organic Act called 1423K, which allows our local leaders to directly petition the Congress, so there would never be another walkout, because they have the hotline to D.C. and they're able to communicate with D.C. directly on grievance items. I think that in general, especially after the full establishment, we have an Elected Governor Act and then the Delegate Act, but especially after the establishment of an independent judiciary for Guam in the late 1990s, Guam had all of the elements for self-government. And I don't really think that a person can make an argument that we don't have self-government, because we do. What we don't have is we haven't taken the steps to truly govern ourselves internally through a constitution. And I know that we've talked about this before, and when you were in the Guam legislature, I think you were one of the few people outside of Elizabeth Barrett Anderson in 1996-97 who even talked about a constitution, or even talked about a Guam constitution, or a way for us to have something like a constitution, which would be the baby step forward to politically growing up. And I think it's up to us to grow up. It's not the federal government, mandating us, or the U.S. mandating us. These are choices that our leaders and our government have to deliberately make on our own. And it's not something that is just going to fall out of the sky on us. We have to have leaders who are willing to push the process forward, but they're so scared to death of a very vocal few that they don't even want to try. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, well, you're right. So we actually did have an exercise in self-determination before 1950, And ironically, the government that was created by the so-called colonizer is now used as a vehicle for the separatists to seek separation. Kind of like the Continental Congress as a vehicle for the rebellion against the Brits. But you're absolutely right, Ron. Thanks for calling.
Thank you, Senator. One other little final thing is my big point is ennui. That is, we have a lot of abundance and a lot of benefits here. I just don't think people appreciate just the blessings we have. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Okay, let's. I lost Greg again? Or did I hang up on Greg?
That could have happened. Great callback.
I'm sorry, Greg. Call back. I pushed the wrong button. 7th inning stretch.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Half a day. This is Jade Uggan from Security Title, and in celebration of Tomorrow Month, here is a tip on dealing with your land. You might be thinking of giving part of your property to your child or another family member. Once you have subdivided the property and recorded the map, you will also need to record the deed transferring the title. Just drawing the map is not enough to make sure they actually own the land. Protehi I Tanomu. When it comes to your family land, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
So here we are, Wrigley Field in Chicago, and when I'm walking out of the stadium, I run into none other than Greg. Good afternoon, Greg.
Hey, how are you doing, Bob?
Doing great.
Hey, I just wanted to say that our Representative San Nicolas and Representative Kilili, I think they're working together to push all of the islands out here. It seems that that's what's happening, and I really appreciate it. I've actually met Greg Kilili out in town in Garapan over in Saipan, and he is such a nice guy. I haven't had the opportunity to meet Michael San Nicolas, but it seems like they're really pushing the agenda for recognition of the islands out here.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, Greg.
Anyway, I just want to push that and give them both kudos for all their work.
Well, I'll bet you dollars to donuts they're both listening, and they're probably thinking, man, that Greg is really right on. Thanks a lot, Greg.
You bet.
Yeah, Michael San Nicolas, I mentioned this morning on Ray's show since his name came up. According to the news reports, Michael San Nicolas was able to get a provision in the latest stimulus bill where the national government would reimburse money paid out for the earned income tax credit. If that, and that's the report, that is a tremendous victory. Now, I've spent a lot of time explaining that we really don't have to pay the earned income tax credit. And I've given the chapter and verse on that, and anyone who's interested, it's Revenue Ruling 96-001, a nice piece of work by Joey Duenas. We don't have to pay it because the Organic Act makes the income tax laws, the revenue laws of the United States applicable to Guam. But when it comes to the cash out part of the earned income tax credit, that is where instead of the taxpayer paying in, we pay the taxpayer. That ain't a tax. That's a social welfare program. And there's nothing in the Organic Act that said the social welfare programs of the United States shall be equally applicable in Guam. So we don't have to pay it. I went through this with Ray this morning. Historically, Carl Gutierrez didn't pay it for 3 years. The Republican legislature, of course, wanted to make an issue out of it. So now we have a statute on the books that requires that it be paid. Yeah. Joey said we didn't have to pay it, and he also said even if I wanted to, I can't, because there has to be an appropriation to expend money from the Treasury. So that law that the legislature passed requires him to pay the money out, and there's a continuing appropriation for as much as necessary. So we've been paying that money out all this time for nothing. So if it's a choice between paying the money out, not paying the money out because we don't have to, on the one hand, or paying the money out and then getting reimbursed by the national government on the other hand, well, obviously the second one is better, because the second one is going to dump about $55 million of new money into the economy or into the government. I would assume it's going to go into the economy. It may just all go to the 19th floor, to that floor safe up there in the 19th. Yeah, once it gets to the 19th floor, we'll never find it after that. Okay, so I exhausted the local card. I'm going to go back and work a little bit more on Newspeak versus English, translating social justice Newspeak. And I spent some time on this already. But this is pretty important stuff, because this is what's going on in the mainland right now. All of the things that we thought were undebatable, that only a man and women could get married, that a man could never become a woman no matter how badly he wanted to be, etc. That when it came time for sports events, men had a natural advantage, so we let the women have their leagues and the men had theirs. But we're doing away with all of that. And I've gone into this before. It's all applications of cultural Marxism, and it's all designed to lead the way towards a socialist and then a communist state instead of what we have right now. But where we are right now, we're modifying the vocabulary in the English language, modifying the meaning of words, just like in George Orwell's 1984. Yesterday, I talked about diversity, and I gave you the rather astounding thought. I shared the rather astounding thought with you that, notwithstanding the fact that you must say our strength is our diversity whenever the opportunity presents itself, it's not true. Our strength is not our diversity. If we're talking about ethnic or racial diversity, it's not a strength. And I laid out some interesting facts about gun violence. The less ethnic diversity, the less gun violence. Now, that's not to say that where we are is the wrong place. It's just to say that we can't continue to play this identity politics game where people are encouraged to separate themselves into various identity groups based on race, ethnicity, sex, gender, and these other things, and sorting themselves out into the oppressed and the oppressor. And of course, you know who the oppressor always is. And by doing that, we are introducing an element of chaos into our society that is not our strength. It's our weakness. We had a society at one time where it didn't matter because we used to hold ourselves out as a melting pot. The United States is a melting pot. People come from all over the world with different languages, religions, backgrounds, etc. They come to the United States and they blend in to the United States, into the melting pot. To say something like that today in certain company I would get, you are a racist to say that. You are a racist. So yesterday's enlightenment is today's racism. And as part of this, the left, the neo-Marxists, have done violence to our vocabulary. Yesterday, I spent some time on diversity. Today, I want to talk about inclusion, because the big three are diversity, inclusion, and equity. That's what we should all be looking for. Inclusion. Diversity policy requires inclusive practices. All identities must be respected or nurtured in a safe, positive environment, or a welcoming environment, which must, after all, be created, maintained, and policed. As the Washington Task Force defines it, inclusion refers to how groups show that people are valued as respected members of the group, team, organization, or community. Inclusion is often created through progressive, consistent actions to expand, include, and share. Inclusion includes. Okay, that's the wrap. What does this mean? Creating a welcoming environment for supposedly marginalized groups entails singling them out for welcoming treatment and protecting them from what they consider unwelcoming. Can you spell politically correct? The dominant culture is already welcomed. On university campuses, it begins with establishing safe spaces like an LGBTQ plus center or a woman's center, where the special needs of supposedly disfavored groups can be provided, whether counseling or meals. In healthcare, it requires special outreach for aggrieved minorities, singling them out for getting vaccine, maybe. Inclusion demands more. What does not affirm their identity as a member of the marginalized group also compromises a welcoming environment. You got to affirm their identity as a member of the marginalized group. So if you have a tranny, someone who was born with male plumbing, who now presents themselves as females, you must be very appreciative when that person tells you that I'm a transgender, even though you might have thought that the person was a female. Oh, I'm a trans. Oh, how wonderful! So proud of you for coming out like that. What does not affirm their identity as a member of the marginalized group also compromises a welcoming environment. Even presence of the dominant culture and its symbols can be unwelcoming. Some of this agenda deserves universal support, like stigmatizing racial epithets. But inclusivity politics can also prescribe criticism and allow the supposedly marginalized group to define what makes an unwelcome or an unwelcome environment. SAT, scholastic aptitude tests, unwelcoming. Grades, unwelcoming. A thin blue line flag, unwelcoming. Exclusive black power fist, inclusive. Hate speech codes arrive when they do in the name of inclusion. Anyone wearing a MAGA hat violates the dictates of inclusivity, while a BLM shirt affirms and confirms the status of marginalized groups, just like going to the to Skinner Plaza and kneeling with your white coats on and kneeling for 8 minutes. That confirms the status of marginalized groups. Ideas of meritocracy and even kind words on behalf of traditional marriage are, in this definition, violations of inclusion. Yeah, if you say You know, my mom and dad were married back in 1938, and they lived happily, you know, for a long, long time. You're a racist. You're a sexist. You're a homophobe.
It's automatic.
It is. The infamous incident at Evergreen State, where whites were ordered off campus for a day of absence, was done in the name of inclusivity. Black-only spaces on campus or rainbow graduations are safe, affirming inclusive spaces where the marginalized will be affirmed, though these practices appear exclusive on the old definition. A white male graduation space would be exclusive and prohibited. Orwell called this black-white in 1984, since who is saying the thing determines its truth and justice, not the actual content of the saying. When advocates demand inclusivity, one should hear the value of purportedly marginalized groups as well as their victim status must be affirmed and cannot be questioned, while privileged groups must confess both their privilege and their inner guilt. It may not start there, but it goes there. So we're going to have to break. We're going to head for Churchill Downs. Let me see who's going to get a break after Churchill Downs. That's our Fred. We're going to have a chat with our Fred after Churchill Downs.
Hey, big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
76 Circle K, the Subaki Tower, and Spa Ayalam bring you another staycation. We are celebrating Mom and all she does. Win a 2-night stay at the luxurious Subaki Tower, get pampered by Spa Ayalam, and enjoy a delicious lunch and dinner at Casa Oceano. All you have to do is purchase $35 or more in 76 fuel and enter to win a staycation fit for a mom. The more you gas, the more chances of winning. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com or any Circle K location for more information.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. I've got our Fred in the green room, and I just got one more point to make, and then we're going to hear from our Fred. I have the operative portion of a Supreme Court case called Brown versus Board of Education, which everybody knows, right? 1954, the great desegregation case. Well, given the enlightenment that we now have in the year 2021, I think it's time that Brown were overruled because it obviously operates on a wrong premise. I'll read the key language. The doctrine of separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. This was after finding that the facilities in Kansas were equal. It wasn't a matter of, one being better than the other. Separate but equal has no place. Separate educational facilities are inherently unequal. Therefore, we hold that the plaintiffs and others similarly situated for whom the actions have been brought are, by reason of the segregation complained of, deprived of the equal protection of the laws guaranteed by the 14th Amendment. So the cases that came before the Supreme Court, at least the Brown versus Board of Education of Kansas, the finding was that the schools for black kids and white kids were equal. They were separate, but they were equal. One wasn't better than the other. But the Supreme Court said that won't work. Even if they're equal, the fact that they're separated makes them unequal, a denial of equal protection. Now, given what I've just been talking about here, you could see how wrong that was. That decision is dead wrong, and it must be overturned so that it says there shall be separate and equal facilities for each group that brings itself within the ambit of identity politics. That's what they wanted to say. And they would look at this as right up there with Dred Scott or Plessy versus Ferguson. This is a horrible decision. What is this separate and equal stuff? We want to, I mean, we want to be separate. Yeah. And equal's okay. We really deserve more than equal, but let's just start out with separate and equal. That's what they're basically saying. And unfortunately, folks, they're winning. They are ahead. Look at all of the stuff that Joe Biden is doing to cater to this whole identity politics thing. I read yesterday Susan Rice and her take on equity. Equity means taking stuff away from one group and giving it to another group. Okay, I've kept him waiting for a little while, but our Fred is generally a patient fellow, right, our Fred?
Hey, Bob. How you doing?
Good.
So I wanted to echo what I think it was Keith that was saying on your show earlier, that here we are always trying to be separate from the U.S. or independent from the U.S. or always saying that we do not want to be a colony of the U.S. or decolonization or all that kind of stuff. And all of a sudden, one senator in Congress, Senator Green, all of a sudden said Guam is foreign. And here we are all up in arms, appalled, and saying our sons fight for the U.S. and we're part of the U.S. and you don't know anything and all that kind of stuff. We're ready to send tomorrow chip cookies to her and prove to her how we're part of Guam, the U.S. and all that kind of stuff. Where America's day begins.
Yeah.
How crazy is this, and how contradicting are we?
You would have thought that they would have embraced her. Hooray for Senator Green. She's finally,
exactly.
She's for self-determination.
Exactly. Take her words and march towards decolonization with that. Why send her more chip cookies and remind her where her what her geography is lacking?
Yeah.
It's insane. I hope this is a wake-up call. Look at, you know that song, Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone? It's by Cinderella back in the 80s, that rock band.
Yeah.
You know, all of a sudden, for a moment, it seemed like we are not part of the U.S. when she uttered those words. And we all of a sudden remembered what we had or what we got. And it was gone for a split second all of a sudden.
And we really...
I hope right?
Yeah, go ahead, Fred.
I hope the movement and all that, this decolonization, independence talk, and I think you were saying something about this identity politics. I hope all of a sudden this is all extinguished now. That we all of a sudden know that we are so important to be part of the U.S. that we are sending her cookies to remind her, hey, we're a part of the U.S., okay? Don't forget us. I hope all the movers and shakers of all this decolonization stop now, since we are so worried that someone in Congress doesn't know who we are.
Well,
we're part of the U.S.
The next thing will be for the Protehe Latexan folks to picket every bakery that sells cookies in protest.
Yeah. Don't send her any.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is a good, nice reminder to our politicians. We want to be part of the U.S. We love being part of the U.S. And I think the U.S. is doing a lot of things. They're sending $661 million to Guam. Which country's going to do that if we weren't part of the U.S.? Or if we were, like, in some different form, independent from the U.S.?
Exactly.
Yeah, we need the U.S.
Yeah, I agree,
That's
Fred. You said a mouthful, our Fred.
I did, a mouthful.
You sure did. I'm glad you called.
Yeah, I want to echo that. So thank you, Bob. Maybe you can elaborate bring it home.
Okay. Thank you, Arfred. Yeah, so Arfred makes a really good point. You know, the separatists, tomorrow self-determination. We never get a chance to, and then somebody comes along and says, "Bap, you're foreign." Oh, boy, are we angry about that.
Well, we didn't want it to happen really quickly.
Yeah, we don't really want it to happen at all. We just want to bitch about it a lot. It's kind of the underlying theme there, I think.
Like I said, it was her Trump mask, I think, that triggered everything. And what she said about Guam was just happenstance.
Yeah, well, anybody who supports Trump starts out on the wrong foot anyhow, no question about that. But I hope we take advantage of this and don't spoil it like we have a tendency to spoil so many things with our grievance politics. So I got about 5 minutes left here. I've pretty well gone through everything I need to go through on Newspeak versus English. Next item on the card, talk about identity politics, is Bavacqua versus the military. Mr. Identity Politics in person, right? So I'll maybe get started on this. I won't be able to do much with it, but I'm looking at his column here. This is one of his older columns. Political status at the root of military buildup issues. For him, political status, the way he defines political status, is at the root of every issue. And remember the old saying from the left, the issue is never the issue. The issue is the revolution. There are many misconceptions about decolonization or changing Guam's political status out there in the community. These misconceptions often limit our understanding about our current status as an island on the edge of Asia in the Western Pacific, thousands of miles away from the U.S. They also can sadly limit our understanding of what to do, to what is possible, or what might be done to improve our position in the world and in relation to the U.S. Nowhere is this clearer than the terms of Guam's political status and the U.S. military buildup on island. While issues such as economic impact, decreased or increased security risks, cultural and social damage are relevant, the issue of Guam's political status is at the foundation of everything. Our existence as an unincorporated territory is directly tied to the strategic value to the U.S. You don't have to take my word for it. Generations of military commanders have said the same thing. They regularly remind us that what makes Guam different than the Philippines, Japan, or South Korea is that there's no sovereign government here that can interfere with what the U.S. wants. As a matter of fact, Singh Pak said the same thing in nationally covered news when he said that we need to have that Aegis missile defense system installed in Guam, and that his major effort is going to be Guam because exactly what Bavacqua said here, it's not a foreign country. Right? Something I guess that we should see as a disadvantage. Going on with Bavacqua's column, Guam is, in this thinking, conveniently located in Asia with no interference from any Asian powers. Seems right to me. But at any time, Guam also isn't something fully within the U.S. Union. This means that Guam fundamentally has little to no influence over what happens to it. I don't know if I'll buy that or not. Well, maybe I'll pick this up tomorrow. You've heard it all. You know, Bavacqua pretty much is a one-tune orchestra, but I may pick this up tomorrow. Okay, we'll see you tomorrow.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
The pandemic, 1 year later. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. It's been a year since an outbreak of the novel coronavirus was declared to be a global pandemic. President Biden planning to mark the day with an address to the country.
The president is expected to acknowledge the lives lost and the sacrifices Americans have made as they endured lockdowns and restrictions on everyday life. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says President Biden will also take a look at what's ahead.
He will be talking more about how he will approach this war against the pandemic moving forward.
Tomorrow, the president will sign his first bill into law, the newly passed $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan.
Fox's Rachel Sutherland reports it passed the House Wednesday afternoon with no Republican votes. Ohio Senator Rob Portman telling Fox's Your World with Neil Cavuto because it was flawed.
It was not targeted. It's $1.9 trillion, $1,900 billion. We could have done it for far less than half that and still had the same effect on COVID-19.
At the 1 year mark, there have been more than 29 million cases reported in the U.S., 529,000 deaths blamed on the virus, and more than 92 million in the U.S. have been vaccinated against it. The Biden administration ordering another 100 million doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The president saying there's no danger of a surplus.
This is not something that can be stopped by a fence, no matter how high you build a fence or a wall. So we're not going to be ultimately safe until the world is safe. And so we're going to start off making sure Americans are taken care of first, but we're then going to try to help the rest of the world.
Defending the administration's handling of the influx of migrants, the government's Southwestern Border Coordinator, Roberta Jacobson, refusing to call it a crisis.
We are all focused on improving the situation, on changing to a more humane and efficient system. And whatever you call it wouldn't change what we're doing.
She also attempted to say in Spanish the border is not open, but actually said the opposite. America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, Getting Schooled with Abby Hornacek.
I just think they looked at the list of the companies that were most heavily shorted and decided to go for those.
It's so interesting that this all happened because of a Reddit forum. Also, it just shows the power of the internet nowadays. You know, it's interesting to look at both sides of the story, too. Obviously, the Redditors really benefited off of this, but the hedge funds, not so much.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. From the Fox News Podcasts Network, it's the Fox News Rundown. Start your day with a contrast of perspectives you won't hear anywhere else. A daily morning podcast going far beyond the headlines, tapping into the massive reporting resources of Fox News to provide a full picture of the news of the day.
I'm Dana Perino.
I'm Brett Baer.
I'm Jessica Tarlov.
I'm Chris Wallace, and this is the Fox News Rundown.
Listen and subscribe now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com.
New details emerging about the latest sexual harassment allegation against New York's Governor Cuomo.
The further description of what happened to an aide who says she was summoned to work at the governor's mansion was reported in the Albany Times-Union. The woman, who has not been named, was described in the article as being alone with Cuomo when he allegedly reached beneath her shirt and groped her. The account comes